Welcome to Archive Whispers, a place to fall asleep. Settle in, lower the lights, and let the archive open. Tonight, the warm rain is falling on a small village of palm thatch houses raised on wooden stilts above a wide brown river, somewhere deep in the great forest of the Amazon, in the long season of rains when the water is rising slowly into the trees. The rain comes down soft and steady on the woven leaves of the roofs and runs in thin, warm threads from their edges, and the whole village smells of wet wood, of river mud, and of smoke held low under the dripping eaves. We are going to stay here through one slow, rainy evening and into the night, under one of these low roofs, while the river works quietly at the edge of everything. There is nothing here that needs to be hurried. Only a family settling in against the rain, a fire kept small and low, and the endless soft sound of water on leaves and water on water, going on and on in the dark, the way it has done for as long as anyone in the village can remember. The village is a small thing set in a very great deal of water and forest, a handful of palm thatch houses standing on their wooden legs along a low bank, where the land and the river have long since stopped being two separate things. In the rainy season, the line between them softens and disappears, and the brown water reaches in among the trees and under the houses, so that the village seems to float, half on the earth and half on the slow flood. The houses stand on stilts for a good and simple reason, which is that every year the river comes to them. It is not a thing that takes anyone by surprise. It has happened every year of every life here, and the height of the posts is the measure of long memory, cut to lift the floors above the worst of the flood. A house set low on the bank would be standing in water by now, its floor cold and wet. A house set high on its legs stays dry, the brown water passing quietly beneath it. On one of the posts there are marks, a row of small cuts and dark stains where the water has reached in other years, and the family reads them the way another people might read a calendar. The flood this year is climbing toward the higher marks, slow and certain, a little more each day. No one stands and watches it rise, for it is far too slow to see, but in the morning the canoe is floated a little higher against its rope, and a thing left on the lowest step at dusk is gone under by dawn. Between the houses there are no streets, only narrow walkways of split palm trunks and rough planks laid from doorway to doorway, raised on low forked posts above the wet ground. They bend and give a little underfoot, dark and slick with rain, and they end at the water's edge where the canoes are tied. To go any real distance, no one walks. They step down into a canoe, take up a paddle, and go quietly out over the flood, for in this season the river is the only road there is. Beneath the floor of the house, in the dim space between the planks and the water, there is a whole quiet world of its own. The brown flood moves through it without hurry, carrying small drifting leaves and seeds, and now and then a slow turning branch, and the light that comes down between the boards lies on the water in thin moving bars. Small fish hang in the shadow there, where the family sometimes drops a line straight down through a gap in the floor and pulls supper up into the house without ever leaving the dry. By the doorway, a single dugout canoe is tied to the house post on a long loop of rope, riding low and dark on the water. It is a heavy thing, hollowed long ago from one great trunk, its inside worn smooth and pale by years of bare feet and wet paddles, and a little brown water always stands in its bottom, to be bailed out with half a gourd before going anywhere. This one canoe is the family's road and their cart, and a good part of their livelihood, and in the rains it is never far from someone's hand. The roof above is the most important thing the house owns, and the most carefully made. It is woven from the great fronds of forest palms, split and folded and laid in close overlapping rows over a frame of light poles, layer upon layer, so that the rain runs down the outside and the inside stays dry and dim. A good roof, well made, will turn the heaviest rain of the season, and the sound of that rain upon it, hour after hour, is the sound the family falls asleep to and wakes to, soft and broad and even, like a hand laid over the whole house. Inside, the house is nearly all one open room, and it holds very little, for very little is needed, and the river takes whatever is set down carelessly. Woven hammocks hang in soft curves from the roof posts, rolled up out of the way by day. A few clay pots and gourds stand in one corner. A paddle and a fish spear lean by the door. Baskets of woven palm hang from the rafters out of the damp, and that, very nearly, is all. The empty space is not poverty so much as sense. In a wet world, one keeps little, and keeps it dry. Behind the village, the forest stands very close, a dense green wall that the flood has walked into, so that the lower trees now rise straight out of brown water. This drowned forest at the river's edge has its own name and its own character. For half the year it is dry ground that one can walk across, and for the other half it is a still, shadowed water forest that one paddles through between the trunks. The fish come into it to feed among the flooded roots, and so in their slow canoes do the people, following the water in among the trees. The water itself is a soft, milky brown that never clears, for the river carries a great burden of fine earth down from the far mountains and spreads it over all this low country in the time of flood. It is this same earth, left behind when the water falls again, that makes the riverside land rich and worth the trouble of living on. So the family does not think of the muddy water as dirty. It is the color of plenty, the color of the soil that will grow their food once the river has gone down and gone home. There is a particular smell to the village in the rains, made of many soft things laid one over another. There is the green smell of wet leaves and wet wood, the heavy, fertile smell of river mud, the thin gray smell of wood smoke that never quite leaves the thatch, and under all of it the faint living smell of the water itself, of fish and weed and slow decay and new growth all going on together. It is not a sharp smell or an unpleasant one. It is simply the smell of the place, breathed in so long that no one in the family notices it at all. The nearest other village is a long way off down the river, an hour or more by paddle even in good weather, and the little town with its church and its trader is further still, a journey of the better part of a day. So a house like this one lives mostly to itself, especially in the rains, when the water is high and the sky is low and there is little reason to go far. This is not loneliness exactly. It is only distance. The ordinary distance of a country where the roads are made of moving water and a neighbor is someone you might see at the turning of the season. In this house there lives a single family, 3 generations under the one palm roof, in the easy crowding of people who have never known much privacy and have never missed it. There is an old man and an old woman whose memory holds every flood for 60 years. There are their grown children and the husbands and wives those children brought home, and there are several small ones who go barefoot and brown across the wet planks without ever falling in. They are not named here, for their names are their own. We are only their quiet guests for one rainy night. A lean brown dog lies along the dry planks just inside the doorway, its nose on its paws, watching the rain with the patience of an animal that has nowhere else it would rather be. Out on a small raised platform of its own, lifted above the flood on 4 short posts, a few chickens sit hunched and quiet under a scrap of thatch, grumbling softly to themselves whenever the rain comes harder. They too know the season. They keep to their dry corner and wait, as everything here waits, for the long water to do what it does every year and then, in its own time, withdraw. There are 2 great seasons in this country, and the family lives by both of them as another people might live by summer and winter. In the dry months, the river falls far down between wide beaches of warm sand. Gardens are planted in the new mud, and the world grows open and bright and easy. In the wet months, the river climbs back up into the trees. The gardens go under, and life draws inward, closer to the hearth and the hammock and the dry shelter of the roof. This now is the heart of the wet, the deep middle of the rains, when patience is the only crop that grows. And so the evening settles over the village, gray going slowly to a deeper gray, The rain neither heavier nor lighter, but simply continuing, as it has continued all day and will continue all night. Somewhere under the next roof, a child laughs and is hushed. A paddle knocks once against a canoe and is still. The smoke leans out from under the eaves and is pressed back down by the rain. Inside our house the lamp is lit, a small warm eye in all that wet gray dusk, and the long quiet business of the evening begins. The first light of the morning comes to the village slowly and without color, a thin gray seeping in under a sky still full of rain. There is no sharp dawn here in the wet season, no clean line of sun over the trees, only the dark of the night thinning gradually into the dim of the day, until at some uncertain hour it is simply morning, and has been for a while. The rain is still falling, soft and steady, exactly as it fell through the night, so that waking and sleeping are stitched together by the one unbroken sound. In the house the family wakes the way it slept, slowly and in no hurry, the hammocks stirring one by one as the gray light grows. The morning air is cool and damp, and smells of the river, and for a little while everyone stays curled in the warm hollow of their hammock, listening to the rain, in no rush to set their feet on the cool plank floor. There is nowhere they must be, and no hour they must keep. The day will take whatever shape it takes, and it is in no greater hurry than they are. It is the old woman who rises first, as she has risen first for more years than she can easily count. She lowers herself stiffly from her hammock, stands a moment with one hand on a roof post until her old knees agree to hold her, and then crosses the floor in the dimness to the corner where the hearth waits, going by feel and long habit more than by sight. The others hear her go and do not stir. This is the order of the morning, and it begins, as it always begins, with her and with the fire. The hearth is not on the plank floor itself, for an open fire and a wooden house would not long agree. It is built up on a low square bed of packed clay and river sand, raised in a stout wooden box in one corner, so that the heat and the coals rest on earth and not on wood. On it stand 3 blackened logs arranged like the spokes of a wheel, their ends meeting at the center where the fire is fed, and over them a low rack of green sticks for setting pots and fish above the heat. It is a small thing, and the whole life of the house turns around it. She does not strike a new fire each morning, for that would be wasteful of effort and of the dry tinder that is so hard to keep dry in this season. Instead, she kneels and finds the buried coals from the night before, raked together under a soft gray blanket of their own ash, and still holding, deep in their hearts, a small red life. She leans close and breathes on them, slowly and evenly, and feeds them little curls of dry bark and shaved wood kept up in the rafters away from the damp, until the red wakes and spreads and takes hold of the new wood with a low, contented sound. The smoke rises from the waking fire in a thin blue-gray column, climbs through the dim air of the house, and finds its way out slowly through the woven palm of the roof, for there is no chimney here, and none is wanted. The smoke is not only tolerated but valued. It drifts up through the thatch and through the baskets and tools hung in the rafters, and it keeps the insects down and the palm dry and the stored things sound. A house that has lost its fire for too long grows damp and sour and full of small biting life. A house with a living fire smells of smoke and is well. With the fire alive, she sets a blackened clay pot on the rack and pours in water dipped from a large gourd by the wall, river water that has stood overnight and let its finest mud settle to the bottom. While it warms, she takes down a covered basket and a worn gourd bowl and begins the first work of food, which in this house, as in every house along the river, means beginning with the manioc. Everything here, in one form or another, comes back to the manioc. It is the bread of this country, and the day does not properly start without it. The manioc comes to the morning already in the form of meal, a coarse, pale flour of toasted root that the family makes itself in the dry season and stores in baskets lined against the damp. A handful of this dry meal stirred into a gourd of water makes the simplest and commonest food of the river, a thin, cool porridge that fills the stomach and asks nothing of the cook but a clean gourd and a steady hand. The children will have it so, soft and plain, and the grown ones will have it stirred a little thicker, with whatever else the house can spare to go beside it. Beside the meal there is fish, for there is nearly always fish, and the river in flood is generous if one knows where to drop a line. 2 or 3 small fish taken on the night line still lie cool in a leaf, and these she lays on the green rack over the coals to warm and smoke a little, turning them once with her fingers and a flat stick. The skin tightens and darkens, the white flesh firms, a thin good smell rises and mixes with the wood smoke, and the children who were not hungry a moment ago are awake now and watching quietly from their hammocks. Now the household truly begins to stir. The small ones climb down from their hammocks and pad across to the warmth of the fire, drawn to it as small creatures are always drawn to warmth on a damp gray morning. A young woman rises to help her mother, and an old man settles himself on a low stool near the heat, with his hands held out to it, saying little, watching the rain at the doorway. The dog lifts its head, judges that food is near, and arranges itself hopefully at the edge of the firelight to wait. The food is shared out without ceremony and without waste. Each takes a gourd of the soft manioc porridge and a share of the warm fish, picked apart with the fingers, and they eat where they sit, on stools and on the floor and in the curve of a hammock, in the easy quiet of people who have eaten together every morning of their lives. There are no plates to wash, only gourds to rinse over the side. There is no table to clear, only the floor to sweep of bones for the dog and the river. It is a small breakfast, and it is enough. When the eating is done, the old man tips a little of the warm fire-heated water into a gourd and drinks it slow, and for a while no one does anything at all. They sit in the firelight and the gray light, full and warm, and listen to the rain, and watch the smoke climb, and let the morning find its own slow feet. This unhurried pause is not laziness. It is the natural breathing of a life that the river will not let be rushed. The day's work is coming, and will be done. But first there is this, the quiet after food, with the rain going on outside. But the rain does not excuse the household from its work, and presently the men begin to ready themselves to go out upon the water. For fish must be caught, and the flooded forest must be visited whether the sky is kind or not. They check the canoe and bail it out, look over the nets and the long fish spear, and take down their wide hats of woven palm that turn the rain from their shoulders. They do not complain of the weather, having known no other for weeks. They only prepare for it, quietly, the way one prepares for a thing that is simply true. The women and the old ones have their own morning work, which keeps mostly to the dry shelter of the house and the covered platform beside it. There is the fire to tend and feed, the gourds to fill, the manioc meal to sort and keep dry, the eternal mending of net and basket and cloth, and the small ceaseless minding of the youngest children, who must not be allowed to wander too near the open edges where the brown water waits below. The work is quiet and unhurried, and never quite finished, flowing one task into the next like the rain itself. No one in the house keeps the hour, for there is no clock here and no bell, and the time of day is told by older and gentler signs. It is told by the slow strengthening and fading of the gray light, by the rising and easing of the rain, by the emptiness or fullness of the stomach, and by the long habit of the body, which knows when it is time to rise and time to eat and time to rest without ever being told a number. The morning is simply the morning. It lasts as long as it lasts, and gives way to the afternoon when it is ready, and not before. So the morning of the house turns over into its work. The fire settling to a steady low warmth, the smoke leaning up into the thatch, the rain keeping its long soft time over all of it. And down at the water's edge the canoe is loosed at last from its post, and slides out quietly onto the brown flood, carrying 2 of the men away into the rain toward the flooded forest, where the fish are feeding among the drowned trees. We will follow them out, for a while, onto the water and in among the trees, while the rain comes down. Out on the open water the rain meets the river, drop joining flood, and the whole wide surface is alive with a soft, endless dimpling, 10,000 small rings opening and overlapping and washing away. The canoe moves through it slowly and steadily, the paddle dipping and rising with hardly a sound, and the two men sit low and easy, their wide palm hats shedding the rain in thin curtains from the brim. There is no hurry in them and no hurry in the river. There is only the long, quiet work of going out across the water in the rain. They steer toward the edge of the forest, to the place where the open river ends and the drowned trees begin, and there the world changes. The wind and the open rain fall away behind them. The surface grows still and dark and glassy under the canopy, and the canoe slips in among the trunks into a green shadowed quiet. This is the flooded forest, the water woods of the high season, where for these few months one may paddle softly over what is, in the dry time, firm walking ground deep in the trees. Inside the flooded forest, the rain becomes a sound more than a feeling, a soft, broad hush high up in the canopy where the drops are caught and broken by a million leaves before they ever reach the water below. Only a fine, warm mist of it filters down here, and a slow, irregular dripping from leaf to leaf to the dark surface, each drop sending out one small ring that travels a little way and is gone. The light is green and low and even, the air close and warm and full of the breath of growing things, and the canoe seems to hang in a still green dusk that has no hour and no edge. The men do not speak much in here, for the flooded forest seems to ask for quiet, and in any case they have fished it together so many times that there is little that needs saying. One sets the paddle aside and lets the canoe drift, and takes up instead a long, slender bow and a few fishing arrows, their points barbed and fine, made for the taking of fish in shallow water. He kneels in the bow and grows very still, watching the dark surface and the dim shapes beneath it, while his companion holds the canoe steady with the smallest movements of a hand in the water. Here in the flooded forest, the fish have come to feed, drawn in among the trees by the fruits and seeds that fall from the canopy into the water in this generous season. Many of the fish of this country eat fruit, rising to take the figs and palm nuts that drop from above, and the people have learned over long generations where and when the fruiting trees let go their crop, and they wait beneath them as a hunter waits at a trail. To fish here well is not only to be quick of hand, but to know the forest, to know which tree feeds which fish in which week of the long rains. For a long while nothing happens, and the not happening is itself a kind of work, a patient emptiness that the river rewards. The mist drifts, the drops fall, a leaf turns slowly past on the dark water, and the man in the bow holds his stillness as the forest holds its quiet. Then, with no haste and no sound, the bow bends, the arrow goes down into the water at a low flat angle, and a moment later he lifts it again with a good fish turning and gleaming on the barb. He frees it into the bottom of the canoe, lays the bow ready once more, and returns to his patient watching, as though nothing has occurred at all. The fish gather slowly in the bottom of the canoe, a small, heavy silver harvest against the dark, wet wood, and there is no greed in the taking. The men take what the house needs for a day or two and no great deal more, for there is nowhere to keep a surplus in this heat and this wet, and the river is trusted to provide again tomorrow. It is an old and unspoken understanding, learned without ever being taught, that one does not strip the water bare, one takes a share and leaves the rest, and the forest and the flood keep their long bargain in return. All around them the flooded forest is far from empty, though it seems so still. High in the canopy small birds move and call softly through the rain, and now and then a troop of monkeys passes overhead along the branches, shaking loose a shower of drops and pausing to look down at the canoe before going on. A bright kingfisher waits on a low bare branch above the water, perfectly still, and a line of leaf-cutter ants crosses a half-drowned trunk, carrying their green sails up out of reach of the flood. The forest is full of small, quiet lives, all of them going patiently about the long business of the rains. Once, out on a wider stretch of darker water between the trees, The smooth gray back of a river dolphin rolls slowly up into the air and slides under again with a soft breath and the gentlest of ripples. The men glance toward it but do not disturb it, for the river dolphin is held in a kind of respect along this water, wrapped in old stories and best left to its own affairs. It surfaces twice more, further off, pale and unhurried in the green dusk, and then is gone about its business under the flood, and the men return to theirs. They move deeper in, threading the canoe between the trunks along paths that exist only in this season and only in their knowing, for there are no marks here and no signs, and a stranger would very quickly be lost among the drowned trees. But these men carry the map of the flooded forest in their heads, built up over a lifetime of paddling it, and they read the trees the way another reads a road. This great buttressed trunk, that leaning palm, this open green aisle that leads to a quiet pool where the big slow fish like to lie. The forest looks the same in every direction, and to them it is everywhere different. At the quiet pool they pause again and set out a different sort of fishing, a line and baited hook let down beside a sunken log where a larger fish is known to wait. This is slower work still, and they settle into it without complaint. The canoe drifting in a slow circle, the rain whispering far up in the leaves, the line going down into the dark and holding. Time spreads out and softens. A man could fall half asleep here, lulled by the green light and the drip and the gentle turning of the boat, and only the small tug on the line would call him back. While they wait, the older of the two speaks now and then in a low voice, half to his companion and half to the forest, naming the things they pass and remembering other floods. He points with his chin to a high pale scar on a trunk where the water reached in the great flood of his boyhood. Far above this year's mark, he tells where a certain fruiting tree stands that will draw the fish in another month. He recalls a season when the rains came late and the gardens nearly failed. The young man listens and says little, gathering the old knowledge as quietly as the canoe gathers fish. The line goes taut at last, slow and heavy, and there is a quiet, careful struggle. The canoe tipping a little, the water swirling darkly, until a large, deep-bodied fish is brought up over the side and into the boat. It is enough. With this, the day's fishing is well made, and the men have no wish to stay longer than the house needs them to. They coil the line, lay the paddle back in their hands, and turn the canoe slowly around in the narrow water to begin the long, quiet way back out of the forest toward the open river and home. The way back feels different from the way in, as the way back always does, shorter and easier though it is exactly the same distance, because the work is done and the mind is loose to drift. The canoe slides out of the green shadow of the trees and back onto the open river, and the rain meets them again in the open, soft and warm and steady, and the wide gray water opens out ahead. Far off across it, low and dark and almost lost in the rain, the village waits, a thin gray thread of smoke rising from one of its roofs to say that the fire is kept and the house is well. They paddle home without hurry across the wide flood, the catch lying cool and quiet in the bottom of the canoe, the rain falling on their shoulders and running from their hats. There is a deep ordinary contentment in it, the contentment of work well done and food secured, of a body tired in the right way, and a home drawing near. They do not speak of it and would not know how. It is simply there, in the easy rhythm of the paddle and the slow nearing of the smoke, a quiet good feeling as plain and unremarkable as the rain itself. At the house, the canoe is brought in beneath the doorway and made fast to its post, riding a little lower now with the weight of the catch, and the fish are handed up out of the wet into waiting hands. There is a small, quiet pleasure in the household at the sight of them. Not excitement, but a settled satisfaction, the knowledge that the day has given what it needed to give. The men climb up onto the dry planks at last, set down their hats, and stand a moment under the good roof, dripping and easy, while the rain goes on falling on the river they have just come in from. And so the long middle of the day turns over toward the afternoon. The men home and dry, the fish given to the house, the rain unbroken over all of it. There is more work yet to come before the dark. The slow, careful work of the manioc and the mending and the keeping of the house. But for this one small space there is rest, and the good tiredness of the water still in their arms. We will go back up now into the house, out of the rain, and watch the long afternoon work of the women and the old ones, while the river keeps its place below. The afternoon of a rainy day belongs to the slow handwork of the house, the long patient tasks that can be set down and taken up again, that need no fine weather and no dry ground, only steady fingers and the shelter of the roof. With the men home and the fish caught, the household settles into this quiet labor, spreading itself across the dry planks in twos and threes, each to some small ongoing work, while the rain keeps up its broad, soft sound over the thatch and the gray light leans in at the open walls. By the doorway, where the light is best, one of the men sits cross-legged over the fishing net, mending the day's small damages before they can grow into large ones. He works a slim wooden needle of his own making, loaded with twine spun from forest fiber, knotting and drawing and testing each repair with a tug, his eyes close to the work. A net is a long labor to make, and an easy thing to lose, torn open on a sunken branch in a careless moment, and so it is tended daily, knot by patient knot, the way one tends anything that feeds a family. Near the middle of the floor, a young woman sits weaving a basket from strips of split palm and the long pliant stems of a forest reed, her hands moving in a steady practiced rhythm that needs almost no watching. Over and under and over the strips go, the basket growing slowly outward and upward from her lap, a thing that will carry manioc or fish or fruit and last for years before it wears through. She learned this as a small girl at her grandmother's side, and her own daughter sits now beside her, fumbling with a few strips of her own, making something small and crooked and entirely her own. The old woman has taken up her spinning, drawing out thread from a soft cloud of cotton grown in the dry season garden and kept against just such days. She turns a small wooden spindle that hangs and twirls from the lengthening thread, feeding the fiber with one hand and letting the weight do its slow work, and a fine, even strand winds itself up under her fingers as if by its own will. This thread will become twine, or be woven in time into the cloth of a hammock, the same unhurried craft passing cotton into thread, into cloth, into the very beds the family sleeps in. Off in one corner the old man bends over a half-shaped paddle, working the pale wood with a small iron blade, taking off thin curls one stroke at a time. He is in no hurry to finish it, for the making is half the pleasure, and a paddle made carelessly will blister a hand and tire an arm across a long day on the water. He turns it in the gray light, sights down its length, shaves a little more from one edge, and runs a broad thumb along the smoothing wood to feel for the balance only his hands can judge. Some of the fresh fish must be made to keep, for more was caught than can be eaten before it turns in this heavy warmth, and so a part of the afternoon goes to preserving it. The fish are split and cleaned with a few sure strokes, laid open, and set upon a low rack of green wood built over a small separate fire of slow, smoky coals. There they will sit for hours and into the night, drying and darkening in the smoke, until the flesh is firm and keeps for many days, a quiet store laid by against the times when the rain is too hard even for fishing. From a basket kept up out of the damp, the young woman brings down a few roots of manioc, brought in days ago from a small garden on higher ground that the flood has not yet reached, and these must be dealt with before they spoil. She peels the dark skin away to the white flesh beneath, and rubs the roots against a rough board set with small hard chips of stone, grating them down to a wet pale mash. It is plain hard work, and her arm tires at it, but it is the beginning of the bread of the country, and there is a kind of satisfaction in the growing pile of it. The wet manioc mash holds a juice that must be pressed from it, and for this there hangs from a roof beam a long sleeve of woven palm, supple and clever, that the people call the tipiti. The mash is packed into the sleeve, and a pole is set through the loop at its lower end, and a weight is brought to bear, so that the sleeve stretches and narrows and squeezes the white juice slowly out into a waiting gourd below. It is a patient old device, made of nothing but woven palm, and it does its quiet work in the corner while the family turns to other things. When the mash is pressed dry, it is rubbed through a coarse sieve and then spread over a wide, shallow pan of clay set on the fire, where it must be toasted slowly into the coarse, pale meal that will keep for months and feed the family through any weather. The cook stirs it without rest with a long, flat paddle, turning and turning so that it dries even and does not scorch, and a warm, toasted smell fills the house and drifts out under the eaves into the rain. This is the meal that began the morning and will end the day, made here in the corner from the root by the work of an afternoon. The smallest children have no real work yet, and so they make their own, as children everywhere do, weaving their play through the quiet industry of the house. One drags a carved wooden fish on a string of twine along the planks and tells it where to swim. Another sits at the open edge under careful watch and drops small things into the brown water below to see the rings they make. A third has fallen asleep midway through some game, curled on a folded mat near the warmth of the fire, undone by the rain and the dim light and the long, soft afternoon. Through all of it, the rain keeps on, and the family barely marks it any longer, for it has become the very weather of their thoughts. It rises sometimes to a heavier drumming on the thatch and sinks again to a fine, soft whisper, and these changes pass over the house like the changes of a long, quiet music that no one is listening to and everyone can hear. Now and then a gust leans the gray curtains of it sideways across the river. Now and then it eases almost to nothing, and the dripping from the eaves takes over, and then it returns and goes on. Someone fills a gourd from the pot and passes it round, and the work slows for a while into talk, the low, easy talk of people who have all the time there is. They speak of small things, of the fish taken in the forest, of a basket nearly finished, of a child's new tooth, of whether the river will reach the higher marks this year or stop short of them. No one argues and no one hurries. The words drift up like the smoke and thin away into the thatch, and the hands, even as they talk, never quite stop their patient making. The young woman sets aside the manioc for a while and takes up the half-made hammock stretched on its simple frame of poles against one wall, working the spun cotton across and through in the slow growing of the cloth. A hammock is the great possession of a person in this country, their bed and their chair and their cradle, the place they are born and rest and, in the end, are carried from, and so it is made with care over many weeks of such stolen afternoon hours. She passes the thread, beats it close, passes it again, and the pale cloth lengthens by a finger's width, and she is content with that. The light, never strong all day, begins now its slow, long fading toward the evening, the gray thickening by imperceptible degrees, the corners of the house filling with shadow. No one lights the lamp yet, for there is oil to be careful of, and the eyes adjust, and the work that can be done in the last gray light is done in it, the finer tasks set aside for the firelight to come. There is a particular peace in this hour, the hour of failing light and finishing work, when the day is spent but the dark has not yet come, and the rain goes on stitching it all together. One by one the afternoon's labors come to their resting places. The mended net is folded and hung. The basket, a little larger than this morning, is set with its fellows. The spindle is wound and laid by. The paddle, smoother now, leans again by the door. None of it is truly finished, for none of this work is ever truly finished. It is only paused, set down at a natural place to be taken up again tomorrow or the day after. The endless patient making and mending that is the real and quiet substance of a life lived on the river. Now at last the old woman takes a splinter of resinous wood, holds it to the embers until it catches, and carries the small flame to the clay lamp by the wall, where a twist of cotton stands in a little pool of oil pressed from forest seeds. The wick takes the flame and holds it, and a soft amber light spreads out into the darkening room, small and steady and warm, pushing the gray dusk back to the open walls. It is the same light that was lit this morning before the dawn, and it will keep the family company now through the long evening and into the falling of the night. With the lamp lit and the work laid down, the house turns toward its evening. The smell of the day's preserving fish hangs in the smoke. The toasted meal is stored away in its dry basket. The rain has not faltered and shows no sign that it ever will. Outside, the dark is coming up off the water, soft and warm and complete, and the village is settling one roof at a time into the small islands of its lamplight. We will stay now into that evening and that night, by the fire and the lamp, while the rain comes down and the river keeps its slow high place below the floor. The evening meal is a quiet gathering of the whole house around the one small fire, and it is the warmest hour of the rainy day. The day's fish, those not set aside to smoke, are cooked simply over the coals, and there is the manioc meal, and perhaps a few plantains laid in their skins among the embers to soften and sweeten, and that is feast enough. The family draws in close, for the fire is small and the dark and the rain press in at the open walls, and they eat in the amber light with the easy quiet of people at the close of a day's work. When the food is done and the gourds rinsed and set by, no one moves away, for there is nowhere to go in the rain and the dark and no wish to go there. They stay close around the fire and the lamp, in the small warm room of light that these make against the night, and the evening loosens into its long ease. Someone feeds a stick to the fire and it flares a little and settles. The smoke climbs, the rain sounds on the thatch, and the family arranges itself comfortably to do the gentlest thing a day can end with, which is simply to be together and unhurried in the warm. Outside, as the last of the light goes, the night of the rainy forest begins to find its voice. The frogs start up first, near and far, 1,000 of them in the flooded trees and the wet edges, their calls overlapping into a deep pulsing chorus that rises and falls and never quite stops. Then come the insects, a fine high singing ring laid over the frogs, and the small calls of night birds, and under it all the steady broad whisper of the rain. It is a great wall of soft sound, the voice of the wet forest at night, and the family has slept inside it all their lives. The small children, full of food and warm at the fire, begin to grow heavy-eyed, and they drift toward the old woman, who is the keeper of the evening stories. They settle against her and against one another in a soft pile, and one of them asks, as children always ask, for a tale, and she lets them wait a moment, gazing into the fire, before she begins. Her voice when it comes is low and unhurried, and worn smooth as a river stone, a voice made for the slow telling of old things on rainy nights, and the room grows still around it. She tells, as she has told many times, of the river dolphin and its old hidden power, of how on certain nights it is said, the pale dolphin may leave the water and walk among people in the shape of a fine stranger in white, charming and unaccountable, before slipping back at dawn into the flood. It is not told as a thing to fear, but as a thing to know, one of the many quiet mysteries of a river that is never entirely understood, and the children, who have seen the dolphins roll in the water with their own eyes, listen with the half-belief that is the proper home of such tales. She tells too of the great mother of the waters, the guardian spirit that is said to dwell in the deepest pools and to watch over the fish and the turtles, and to grow displeased with those who take more than they need or foul the water carelessly. These are old beliefs, older than anyone can say, woven through with the practical wisdom of a people who must live within the river's gift and not beyond it, and in the telling they pass quietly from the old to the young, as the spinning passes cotton into thread, one generation's knowing wound onto the next. The men listen too, though they have heard the tales 100 times, for there is comfort in the hearing of a known story as there is comfort in a known road. One of them mends a small thing in his hands as he listens, by feel, in the half-dark. Another lies back in his hammock with his hands behind his head, watching the smoke climb into the unseen roof. The lamp burns low and steady, the fire ticks and settles. The rain holds its long note, and the old woman's voice goes on, unfolding the night gently, asking nothing of anyone but that they rest and listen. One by one, the children lose the thread of the story and slip over the edge into sleep, and no one wakes them. The old woman lowers her voice as she feels them go heavy against her, until the tale is being told more to the fire than to anyone, and then she lets it trail away unfinished, for it has done its work. The sleeping ones are gathered gently up, one to a hammock and two to a shared one, and tucked into the soft cotton with a light cloth against the cool of the deep night, and they barely stir, carried already far out on their own small rivers of sleep. With the children asleep, the house grows quieter still, and the grown ones speak now only a little, in low voices, of the day behind and the day ahead. The fire is banked down for the night, its coals raked together and covered lightly with ash, so that they will hold their small red life until morning, when the old woman will breathe them awake again. The lamp is left to burn a while longer, a single soft point of amber, and the family settles toward its own sleep slowly, in the unhurried way of people who have never once been hurried to bed. The rain has not stopped, and will not stop, and the family no longer expects it to. It is simply the floor of the night, the thing all the other sounds are laid upon. The frogs pulse on in the flooded trees, rising and falling in their slow, deep waves. The insects keep their high, thin ringing. Somewhere far off a night bird calls 3 soft notes and is answered, and the river, swollen and patient, moves its great slow weight along beneath the floor, carrying the night downstream. Inside, the people are folding one by one into their hammocks, into the soft, curved dark. The old man is the last to settle, as he is often the last, sitting a while alone by the low red fire with a final gourd of warm water, looking out at the dark where the river is. He has seen a great many such nights, more than he could number, each one much like this one and each one its own, and he holds them all somewhere within him, a long, quiet river of rainy evenings reaching back into a boyhood by this same water. He is not thinking of anything in particular. He is only sitting and being old and listening to the rain, and that is enough for him. At length he rises too, stiff and slow, and crosses to his hammock and lowers himself into it with the long sigh of a body glad of rest. The lamp is pinched out at last, or left to gutter down to nothing on its own, and the only light remaining in the house is the faint red breathing of the banked coals, rising and dimming in the corner. The dark comes in soft and complete, and the rain and the frogs and the river fill it entirely, and the house lies quiet at last, a small dry shell of sleeping people held up on its wooden legs above the moving water. Outside, the village is a scattering of dark roofs on the black water, its few lamps gone out now, one after another, each house folding into the same sleep. The rain falls on all of them alike, on the thatch and the river and the forest, making no difference between them, and the great wet night holds the whole small place in its hand. There is no light anywhere but the faint phosphor shimmer of the water and the far cold stars wherever a gap opens in the cloud. And these come and go, and mostly there is only the warm dark and the falling rain. Beneath the floor the river goes on with its endless quiet work, lifting and lowering the tide canoe a hand's breadth and back, turning slowly among the stilts, carrying its burden of leaves and seeds and fine pale earth down out of the dark forest toward a sea that none of the sleepers has ever seen or will ever see. It does not rest, and it does not hurry. It has been doing this since long before the village stood here and will do it long after, and the sleeping house rides upon it the way a leaf rides, lightly, trustingly, going nowhere and perfectly at rest. Inside, the family sleeps the deep, untroubled sleep of bodies tired by honest work and minds quieted by the rain. They lie in their soft cloth hammocks at their different heights, gently curved, gently swaying when one of them turns, breathing slow and even in the dark. No clock will wake them, and no bell. They will sleep until the gray light and the cool air and the old habit of the body lift them, each in their own time, into another rainy morning much like this one. For now there is only the sleeping, and the rain, and the warm dark holding them all. And the rain goes on. It has fallen all this day and all this evening, and it falls now through the depth of the night, soft and warm and without end, on the thatch and the river and the drowned forest, on the sleeping village and the moving water, the one long sound beneath which everything here lives and works and rests. We will stay a while longer in it, you and I, in the warm dark with the rain and the river, as the night reaches its deepest and stillest hour and the whole flooded world slides down gently toward the bottom of sleep. Now the night is at its deepest, and everything has grown very slow. The rain falls, as it has fallen, soft and warm, and even on the woven palm above, on the broad wet leaves of the forest, on the wide dark face of the river, and the sound of it is the only clock there is, marking a time that does not need to be counted. There is nothing now to do and nothing now to think. There is only the rain, and the warm dark, and the slow breathing of the sleeping house, and we may let ourselves grow as slow and as quiet as all of it. Under the floor the river lifts the tied canoe a little, and lowers it again, and lifts it again, slow as breathing, slow as sleep. The rope draws gently tight and gently slack. The dark water turns among the wooden legs of the house, and the canoe rides up and settles down, rocking softly on the great patient body of the flood. There is no haste in it anywhere. It will go on so all the night, the river lifting and lowering, the way it lifts and lowers every canoe in every village, all down the long sleeping length of the water. In the corner the banked coals breathe in the dark, a faint red glow rising and dimming under their soft blanket of ash, rising and dimming, holding their small warmth safe for the morning. No one tends them now, they keep themselves, as they have been taught by long banking to keep themselves, glowing low and patient through the deep hours. The red comes up a little when a breath of air finds them, and sinks again, and comes up, and sinks, a slow warm heartbeat in the corner of the sleeping house, keeping the night's long faith with the dawn that is still many soft hours away. From the eaves the rain drips, slow and steady, drop after drop after drop, gathering at the woven edge of the thatch and falling, gathering and falling, down into the dark water below. Each drop makes one small soft sound and one small ring upon the flood, and then another comes, and another, in no hurry and in no particular rhythm, simply going on, the way the rain has gone on all the day and all the evening and will go on all the night. Drop, and then drop, and then drop, from the dark edge of the roof into the dark water below. Out in the flooded trees the frogs have grown slower too, their deep chorus easing in the deepest part of the night, the calls coming farther apart, softer, sinking toward silence, and then rising again in a gentle swell before sinking once more. They are the voice of the warm, wet dark, rising and falling, near and far, a sound so constant and so soft that to hear it is very nearly to sleep. The family does not hear it any longer, not truly. It has become a part of their sleeping, woven all through their dreams, the deep, slow pulse of the rainy forest breathing in the dark. The hammocks sway barely when a sleeper turns and settles, soft cloth holding warm bodies in their gentle curves, swaying and stilling in the dark. There is the old woman who woke the fire, and the old man who watched the rain, and their grown children, and the small ones in their shared soft beds, all of them sleeping now, all of them carried together on the same slow night. The house holds them, and the stilts hold the house, and the river holds the stilts, and the warm dark holds all of it, lightly, the way a hand holds something it loves and means to keep. And the rain falls. On the woven palm of the roof it falls, soft and broad and even. On the wide dark leaves of the drowned forest it falls. On the slow brown face of the river it falls, drop joining flood, water returning to water in the warm and endless dark. It asks nothing and means nothing and simply falls, as it has fallen since the first evening of the world over this low green country of rivers, filling the night with its one long gentle sound, the sound beneath all the other sounds, the sound that is very nearly silence and is better than silence, going softly on. The canoe lifts and lowers, the coals breathe and dim. The eaves drip, slow, into the dark water. The frogs swell and ease, the hammocks sway and still. And over all of it the rain goes on, soft and warm and without end, holding the whole sleeping village in its long, quiet sound. There is nothing here that needs you, and nothing here that wants anything of you. There is only the warm dark, and the falling rain, and the slow river beneath, and you may rest in it now as completely as the sleeping house rests, held up gently above the moving water. If you are still awake, there is no need to be, and no reward for it. The night will keep just as well without your watching. And if you have drifted somewhere down toward the edge of sleep, then let yourself go on over that edge, slowly, the way the river goes over the low places, without effort and without fear, into the warm, dark water of rest. The rain will go on falling whether you hear it or not. The river will go on lifting the canoe. The coals will keep their small red life until the gray morning, and so, gently, may you. The river is very old and very patient, and it has carried many nights like this one down toward the sea, more nights than there are leaves on the forest, more than anyone could ever count or need to. It carries this one now, gently, with the sleeping village upon it, and the rain upon the village, and the warm dark upon it all, down through the drowned trees, down through the long green country, slow and sure and unhurried, asking nothing, keeping everything, going quietly on through the rain toward a morning that is in no hurry at all to come. And still the rain falls, soft and warm, on the roof and the river and the leaves. The canoe lifts a little and lowers. The coals breathe their faint red breath in the dark corner. The drip falls from the eaves slow into the water. Somewhere far off a frog calls once and is quiet. The hammocks sway, the smallest motion, and are still. The night goes on, deep and soft and warm, and the rain goes on within it, the one long sound, holding everything, asking nothing, falling and falling and falling on the wide, dark, sleeping river. There is nothing more that needs telling tonight, and nothing more that needs doing, and nothing more to wait for. The village sleeps, and the family sleeps, and the river carries them gently on through the dark, and the rain comes down. Let the sound of it be the last thing, the soft, broad sound of the rain on the leaves and the river, going on in the warm dark. The same sound that has filled this night and 1,000 nights before it, and will fill 1,000 more. Let it carry you down now, slowly, into the deep still water at the bottom of sleep. The rain on the roof, the river beneath, the slow lift of the canoe and its slow settling, the faint red breath of the coals, the drip from the eaves into the dark water, and the small ring it makes, and the next drop, and the next. The deep soft pulse of the far frogs, the gentle sway of the hammocks. The warm dark over all of it, and the rain, and the rain, and the rain going on, soft and warm and without end, over the wide sleeping river and the small dark village and you. Rest now. The night is long and soft, and there is a great deal of it left. Hours and hours of warm dark and falling rain, more than enough for the deepest sleep. Nothing will disturb it. The river will hold the village, and the rain will hold the river, and the warm dark will hold it all, gently, until the slow gray light comes seeping back under the low sky, and another quiet rainy morning begins. But that is a long way off yet, and there is nothing to do now but rest, and listen to the rain, and let it carry you down. And the rain falls, soft and warm, on the leaves and the river, and the canoe lifts and lowers on the slow dark water, and the coals breathe their faint red breath in the corner of the sleeping house, and the drip falls from the eaves, and the frogs ease in the flooded trees, and the hammocks sway and still, and the warm dark holds it all. There is only this now, the rain and the river and the warm dark, going on and on, soft and slow and without end, and you, resting in the middle of it, carried gently down towards sleep. Sleep now, if you have not already, down where the rain and the river meet, in the warm dark at the bottom of the night. The village sleeps around you, and the forest, and the wide, slow water, all of it breathing softly together under the falling rain. There is nothing to keep, and nothing to carry, and nowhere at all to be. There is only the rain going on, soft and warm and without end, over the sleeping river and the sleeping village, over the leaves and the dark water, over everything, gently, all the long night through. And the rain falls on, soft and warm, over the wide dark river and the small sleeping village, on and on through the warm dark night, gentle and even and without any end. Rest well. The river will keep you, and the rain will keep the river all the long night through, until the morning. Sleep well. This has been Archive Whispers.
You've reached the end of tonight's archive. If you're still awake, thank you for staying. And if you drifted off somewhere in the dark, then it did its work. Rest now. The next chapter will be here when you are. Sleep well. This has been Archive Whispers.